FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, talk about faces. Well, Janet Yellen, I don't think it matters which angle you look at, but I won't get into that because this is a family show. And here to talk about it, our good friend, John Rubino, dollarcollapse.com. John, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Kerry.
So it was just last week we were celebrating the death of quantitative easing 3.1. And I guess like Mark Twain said, the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated, right?
Yeah. Well, we all kind of knew that Janet Yellen was going to have to come back and take back the thing that she said the last time she spoke. Because she gave a date for the end of low interest rates and the beginning of a rise to more normal levels in interest rates. She said in around 6 months she could see it happening, and the markets didn't like that very much because they don't want it to ever end. And anybody who can do some basic math can see that it can never end, because as soon as interest rates go back up, that'll blow up government budgets, because everybody has borrowed so much money short term that they have to roll their debts over continuously. If interest rates rise, that means their debts roll over at higher and higher rates. So you'll see the US and Japan and a big chunk of Europe have their interest costs just go through the roof. And so on the one hand, interest rates do someday have to go back to normal levels, which would be 6 or 7% on 10-year treasuries versus less than 3% right now. But they can't go back. So keeping low rates like this risks huge asset bubbles out there. And there are already quite a few going on. High-end real estate is through the roof, collectibles of every kind, fine art. These things are all at record levels and rising. Oil is very high. Lots of other things are up. Stocks, of course, equities around the world are way up. And a continuation of easy money means that these bubbles are liable to get bigger and bigger until they become destabilizing. You could make a case that they already are, but to the extent that they get bigger than this, they're even more destabilizing. So the Fed is in a box, and Janet Yellen is now, at least today, she was behaving like the Fed chairman that everybody thinks she was going to be. She's defending easy money, and now she's talking about, instead of 6 months, some time to come before interest rates start to go up, because she's focusing on the labor market where things aren't great, and saying that she'll keep interest rates extremely low until we've got everybody back to work, which could be quite some time, because we've got so many structural problems that really don't have that much to do with interest rates. So it looks like low interest rates as far as the eye can see.
Well, John, to quote her, this is not just an economic debate. And, it's just so funny because, look, we got this deficit. It has to be financed someplace. There's not enough private demand out there. China's not buying our paper. Russia sure isn't buying it. I guess Brussels is about the only place left buying the paper. And if it's not going to be purchased by other foreign nations, then who else is left to buy it? None other than the purchaser of last resort, which is the Federal Reserve. And who was she trying to fool? The only surprise is that she's backtracking so quickly.
And one of the interesting things about this is that quantitative easing and ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, they're seen as two separate but complementary policy initiatives, but they're actually the same thing, at least at the long end of the yield curve, because quantitative easing, the buying of long-term bonds in return for newly created currency, is how they keep long-term interest rates down. So to continue to taper, in other words, to buy back fewer and fewer bonds each month, would mean that they're putting less and less downward pressure on interest rates going forward. So interest rates would be expected to rise as quantitative easing scales back. And so you can't continue to taper and continue to push down long-term interest rates because they're basically the same side of, or, they're opposite sides of the same policy. So they're going to confront that very soon, I would think. Another couple of months of taking $10 billion a month off the table and tapering, and interest rates are going to have to rise, since that's how they were holding interest rates down. So again, the Fed's in a box. There is no easy way out of this, and it's going to flail as it has flailed for the last few years, and end up just continuing to pump huge amounts of money into the system until the system just spins out of control.
And now it all makes sense why the market went up when she announced the taper, because they knew she would have to stop quicker than anticipated. So probably next month or two, they'll stop the taper and they'll just leave it at 55 or 45 billion a month. Then probably a few months down the road, they'll up tapering as the economy begins to sputter and as they need more money to finance the deficit as it starts to grow again. This is what's going to happen. And the other thing, don't forget, John, is that they overprinted money at the beginning, the 85 billion a year, the 85 billion a month, pardon me. That was more money than they needed initially to finance the deficit. So they've got more money in the till than they needed to buy bonds. So they overfinance the deficit on the front end so they can go a few months underbuying treasury debt and mortgage-backed securities. And the deal is that money that they put in there, Wall Street has to buy more treasury debt with it. Let's face it, they're not just giving the money to the banks saying, have some fun. Yeah, go buy some stocks, go do whatever you do. But when we start needing money for the treasury, you got to buy that debt. That's the deal, John. You know it, right? Right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the deal or is that the deal? Sure.
And it's always that kind of a deal. I mean, these aren't really separate organizations, as we've talked about before. This is all one organization, and the different divisions work together to get the desired goal. And in this case, it's low interest rates. And so they can't maintain low interest rates and have economic growth. They just can't do that. So something's going to have to give at some point, and somebody's going to have to change the terms of the deal, and we'll just see how it happens. But I think one of the important things to look at is that this isn't happening in a vacuum. The rest of the world matters greatly to U.S. economic growth and interest rates and money supply and labor markets and all the rest. And you've got China in the early stages of what looks like a fairly serious financial crisis. You've got Japan slowing down dramatically because they just instituted a big increase in their national sales tax, which is deflationary. It sucks money out of the private sector. People can't buy as much, so sales drop, and et cetera, et cetera. So Japan is slowing down, and Europe never picked up, really. They're in kind of a mess. And in France, you're seeing a lot of electoral turmoil just the last couple of days. The National Front Party there, which is anti-immigrant, anti-Euro, and anti a lot of other things that the Europeans are in favor of, it has won some regional and municipal elections. They've elected some mayors and some other representatives. And so now French electoral politics, along with its economy, is going to be in turmoil. So, things are kind of dicey out there all over the world. And for the U.S. to be able to grow consistently while all this other stuff is going on is kind of unlikely. We're affected by what happens overseas. And if China slows down and Japan drops into a recession or flatlines and Europe drops into deflation, then that's going to affect us. And it's going to make it that much harder to get the U.S. economy moving, which means we need that much more easy money. There's no way out of any of this. We borrowed too much money, and now we're just we're blundering from one policy mistake to another because there really is no fix. When you borrow too much money, you got to get rid of the debt somehow, and all the possibilities for getting rid of debt are incredibly painful. And so we're blundering from one hopefully politically painless attempt at fixing it to another, and none of them are going to work. And so the coming year is going to be a kind of a mirror image of the last couple, where we were on kind of an upswing and it appeared that we were fixing things and the numbers were going in the right direction. But now, based on what's going on out in the rest of the world, and the U.S. Feds need to try to start scaling back. 2014 and 2015 and probably 2016 are going to be very chaotic, very dicey months or years.
That's for sure. And I wouldn't want to be a banker on a high floor in a major city, would you?
That's such an interesting story. And I don't know what the answer to it is, that all these bankers are dying in various ways. But it is a heck of a coincidence, because it's not all suicide. It's not all hit and run. It's not all other kinds of accidents or whatever. It's a lot of different things. But that does seem to be a recurring theme in the newspapers these days, Some big banker dying of something or other.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
Well, I want to talk about this because this is the internet, and you no longer have to deal in fact. You can deal in fantasy, and you can deal in meme and making fact and fantasy fit your meme. But we're going to talk more about this on the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. We're talking with John Rubino of DollarCollapse.com.
FSN Radio.
Urgent alert. Ex-Secret Service agent claims it's worse than people know. One of Obama's former Secret Service agents recently smelled a rat. What he discovered inside our government was so devastating, he only saw one option. He quit. What's worse, he fears what he found could affect your job, your neighborhood, and most importantly, your family, very soon. It's worse than people know, he said in a recent interview, and I'm not trying to scare you either. We too share his concerns. This is why we've devoted the better part of 3 years collecting solutions for nearly all problems created by intrusive governments, and we've succeeded. Go to hiddensecrets1.info to check out all the details. Our panel of insiders have devised a legal but sneaky set of solutions to help you reclaim your privacy from the NSA, opt out of Obamacare, and make a bundle from little-known investments and small business opportunities. Simply visit hiddensecrets1.info. That's hiddensecrets1.info.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back. FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. We're talking with John Rubino of DollarCollapse.com. We weren't going to talk about this, John, but I want to address this issue because you and I view us as not necessarily arbiters of the truth, but we try to get to the bottom of the truth. And there's so much speculation and guesswork and trying to just make the facts fit your view of reality rather than trying to get to the bottom of the facts and just present the facts. Now, there's a guy, Joe Giampapa, I believe his name was. He's bankruptcy attorney for J.P. Morgan. I think he's in practice for himself, but, the headline comes out, he's killed in a hit-and-run accident in Ohio. Now, what does he know? Why is he taken out? That's the first guess. Well, we dig a little further into the story, John. It wasn't a hit-and-run accident. He's by a minivan, no less, hit-and-run accident. That's a real interesting tool of an assassin to use a minivan. But anyways, as it turns out, he's hit by a 78-year-old guy in a minivan who stops, and the police question the guy and don't charge him with any crime. And all right, if he's a hitman, if they're now using 78-year-old guys in minivans as hitmen, then something's changed in the world. But the fact is, all throughout the blogosphere, the internet, is hit and run of this guy, J.P. Morgan, commercial bankruptcy attorney. What did he know, and when did he know it, and why are they taking him out? My only point in raising this isn't that, has nothing to do with who he was or what he was. It's just the way these rumors get out of hand, and the facts are just there. So obviously, all you had to do was Google the guy's name, and the facts of the story and the name of the guy who hit him is there. The investigation, the family's quoted everything, And yet we got this rumor and the bankers, they're killing them because they know too much. And John, I don't know what your feeling is, but it's getting out of hand here where nobody wants to know the truth. They only want the facts to conform to their beliefs in conspiracies and everything else, which may very well be going on, but there is this thing called facts, truth, right?
Yeah, and I don't think anybody knows all the details and have connected any of these things. It's just interesting that it's all happening right now,
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe it'll turn out to be connected to something, or maybe it's just a delayed stress reaction to the 2009 crisis. Who knows? But there do seem to be an awful lot of stories about bankers dying for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of them might very well be connected, and there might be something to it. But, let's get facts is my point. Let's learn what's going on here. Let's not speculate. That's all. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I think is important. But anyway, let's get back to what we're talking about here. We're looking at de-dollarization by India, China, and Russia. Russia would like to do it tomorrow. China is much more cautious here. India doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They're just seeing the value of their currency vaporize because they don't know what it's like to run a central bank. China's got immense problems. They're facing their own day of reckoning, and Russia just hates the West and especially the U.S. and would like to do anything they can to blow up the existing order, which is not a real good reason to be doing what they're doing, but they're doing it.
Yeah, Russia's just being Russia over there with Ukraine and everything. And I think probably the long-term, more interesting part of the story is that at the same time all this stuff's going on militarily, Russia's cutting gas supply deals with China and India, in which they're going to use their local currencies, it looks like, to buy and sell energy, which is a very new thing up till today. Almost all of the energy, especially oil that gets sold in the world, is priced in dollars. And that's one of the reasons that the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and 60% of central bank reserves are denominated in dollars, and every big trading company needs to hold huge dollar balances, and why the U.S. has a lot of the power that it has. We can just pump these dollars out into the world, which voraciously accepts them, and use that to finance a global military empire and an entitlement state and all the rest. And you take that away, make the dollar just one of many other currencies, and we lose that power. So part of the rationale for Russia and China and India to cut deals that bypass the dollar would be to diminish the value of the dollar worldwide, and thereby to diminish the power of the U.S. to bully them, because these guys, on the one hand, they like having the U.S. keep order and prevent them from having to do it, but on the other hand, they don't like being the ones who are being kept in order, and they would love to be able to flex their muscles in their own neighborhoods, and being able to trade for energy in their own currencies is one part of that puzzle for them. So I think we should, assuming these deals come off and work well, and the bilateral currency deals turn out to be feasible and doable and beneficial, I think we'll see a lot more of this out there. And I think it could be the beginning of the end for the petrodollar. The dollar's status as the number one only world reserve currency might be threatened by this, because if central banks now want 10% yuan and 5% rubles and throw in some rupees and some real, and all of a sudden they don't need nearly as many dollars as they did, and they'll have to dump a lot of their dollars to rebalance, and that's, other things being equal, going to depress the value of the dollar, pump up our interest rates, and make borrowing harder for us. So that's a separate thing from our own profligacy, which is going to cause the system to implode at some point anyhow. Now you've got the rest of the world moving the process along, and so it could easily be something that happens in the next couple of years, where the world wakes up to the fact that the dollar is not as necessary as it used to be and starts rebalancing, and then you see it snowball. John Williams over at shadowstats.com. He thinks it's going to happen this year. He sees a big chunk of the $15 trillion that exist beyond the U.S. borders coming back when everybody decides they don't want to hold as many dollars, and pushing up U.S. asset prices, because that's how it'll work. They'll Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, will cash their dollars in by buying U.S. assets, and so that'll cause an asset price bubble to expand in the U.S., which will be very inflationary, which will hurt the value of the dollar, et cetera. He sees it manifesting as hyperinflation, and
a crack up boom.
Yeah, a crack up boom. And even if it doesn't happen this year, it's still something that becomes more and more feasible as more and more of these deals are cut, and Russia and China and India find out that they really don't need dollars. And I think that's an inevitable thing, because they're really chafing at U.S. bullying, and they would like to be world powers, or at least very serious regional powers. And one way to do that is to have a currency that trades internationally. So we'll see more of this, and the long-term impact on the dollar is pretty horrendous.
Yeah, and as the Chinese say, Confucius says, make sure you know what you want, because you just might get it. The cost of eliminating the U.S. as the dominant power is going to be instability for quite a while after the U.S. is no longer the dominant power, and these regional blocks, or these regional powers that crop up as a result, going to lead to a lot of instability and potentially regional wars, and it's not going to be a fun place.
Well, I think China and India and Russia probably have the attitude that they'll handle whatever comes along, because they're going to be the ones instigating it. So the instability that might flow from the pullback of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, they would see it working to their advantage, because to the extent that it creates a vacuum, a power vacuum, they will fill the power vacuum. And to the extent that it creates an economic vacuum, because the U.S. isn't as powerful economically, then Russia and China and India and Brazil and lots of other developing countries will fill that void. And so to these guys, what will appear to be instability to us will be just the the rebalancing of the world in their favor. And at least that's how they're viewing it now. Nobody knows how all this stuff plays out, but they don't see the prospect of instability because the U.S. is diminished as a bad thing from their point of view at all.
Yeah, like I say, that's you always when you make these business plans, they always look great until you start doing it, or as the saying goes, no plan survives the first shot after war breaks out.
Mm-hmm.
So it just is not going to be that wonderful after it happens. But
or like Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Exactly. And on that note, we got to go. But we find you on dollarcollapse.com. Link to the site on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Don't forget, sign up for the newsletter. John, we'll talk to you next week.
Great. Thanks, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.